I realized that
we're on air. Courtney, don't.
We're on air.
Yes. Whatever you were going to say.
How long have we been on air?
So go ahead, continue if you feel.
This can be public. I realized like the other day that I was cutting it really close financially before my next like rent goes through. So I've just been like home eating stuff here, like, really conscious about like what I spend. And I actually put some stuff back to Bath and Body Works because I was like, oh yeah, that was dumb. Like I felt like very much more adult. Like, oh, okay, I need to keep track of this right now. But I figured out that like very sharp white cheddar with raw red peppers and like olive oil and balsamic vinegar is really good.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
I needed a snack, and usually I would like, go buy something. And no, I was like, I'm just going to make use of what I have in my fridge. And so
that's fantastic.
It's super hard right now.
Very good. Look at you, Miss Budget. No, I understand. The other day I went to TJ Maxx and there was this cute little jumper, and I like had like a full on conversation with the lady at the cash register, and I was like, I really don't need it, right? Like I don't. It's not a good. I won't wear it. And she was like, I deal with that. I understand, and I'm pretty sure she was tolerating it. I mean, good thing there was no one behind me, right? So.
Oh my goodness. I need a handler at Costco. Every time I go to Costco, of course I need $7 bag of super concentrated cheese cracker thingies that are low carb for reasons. And I have like 3. I'm like, I feel like I'm eating a giant wedge. I cannot have more than 3 of these. Is
that those wisps?
Yes.
Those are strong, eh? They've got a strong flavor. They're like, good on a salad or something.
See, that's what I was thinking. Like, I'll sprinkle on a salad and maybe in some soup or something. And just because it's just.
Yeah, soup, they're good.
I'm like, strong. I can't. I feel like, and it's Parmesan. Nobody just sits and eats a block of Parmesan cheese. And I feel like that's what but of course, Costco's like, this is $7. Like, low carb cheesy sounds good. Throw it right in my basket, along with 9,000 other things. Like, that'll be $350. What?
I love Mel's Twitter because it's like, meme, I'm at Costco. Meme, I'm at Costco.
And then a meme about Costco.
And then a meme about Costco.
Oh, yeah. Like, I'm at Costco. Look at this new filter on my phone. This is like, I like it. This is so nice. No, it's just so, it looks portrait. It's Costco behind me, but I'm digging this photo. That's cool.
Very cool. Anyway, so today we're talking about shopping, and we're also talking about how deconversion changed our minds, like the way that we think and process things. So, or the way that we respond to things. I'm so sorry about my camera, everybody. This is my work computer. Don't tell my boss.
You just told on yourself.
I did. It's fine. It's no big deal. Start. I just said the right word. It's all good. Anyway, so anyway, so I was thinking about like our topic, and one of the things that led me to sort of introduce this topic was, I remember my first semester of college, I signed up for a sociological anthropology course, and the first day I walked in and the teacher started talking about evolution. I mean, of course, right? It's anthropology. Right. But I was like, what is this? Like, I didn't realize they taught this in college. I mean, I was so like in my own little educational world, a Becca book world, that I didn't know that happened, at school, that you learned about evolution. And so I dropped the class because I was like, I can't take this class. It's against everything I believe.
Wow.
Right. Yeah. I know how close-minded I was. But
No,
and
yeah.
no, yes, definitely. But yeah, so that's what brought me to the conversation. And I think like now it's so interesting because now like I stand for evolution, right? Like I stand for like biology and the way that we change over time and how climate change is affecting that. And so it's just funny that deconverting really helps me. And I'm not saying that it's always a good thing, but it really helped me open my eyes to allowing knowledge, right? So I'm not talking about like the debate of like whether or not evolution is true, but like there was like a barrier for me that wouldn't let me even want to understand that stuff. The desire to understand that was missing. And so I wanted to know if you ladies had any experiences like that.
Yeah, I totally did. So I took a minor in anthro in university, and I remember in my 5th year of university, I took a course called Being Human, which was an anthropology course, but it went through a lot of philosophy and the how humans made different discoveries in the like philosophical journey of discovering who we are as humans. And so we've read like Descartes and also like Darwin and different philosophers, and it was really interesting. But I remember we had these tutorial chats, and they were really interesting. And after the students would talk, like after the tutorial, just out in the hallway, and I remember we had this conversation in the group about evolution, and the one guy was like, yeah, I don't know how people don't believe in evolution, like, and just saying that was really like ignorant or whatever. And then I made some comment like, yeah, I don't know, I don't think it's true or whatever. I don't know what I said, but I said something that said that like I doubted that evolution was true because I was pretty well educated in like creationism growing up. So I remember the look that guy gave me. It was like pity and horror, and I like. There's been a few times in university where I've made comments like that, and people have given me these looks, and it's like, why are they looking at me that way? I didn't get it.
You grew a third eye, just instantly, right then. It came just.
It's like, oh wait, oh shit, you're one of those people.
Wow.
And in first year, one more thing. In my first year, I took the Intro to Anthropology course that I took was, or this might have been in my second year, but it was half linguistic, sociocultural linguistic anthropology, and half the like science side of anthropology, like archaeology and the more hard science side. And we had to learn all about the ancient human ancestors and the different skull shapes and whatever. And I remember finding it hard to memorize because in my mind, I was the whole time like, this isn't true, this isn't true, this is stupid, this is what they believe. But I never thought to go ask the professor. It's kind of like you were saying, Christine. I didn't have any curiosity about it. I was just like, this is wrong. And I had like, I don't know. I was like, that's what they believe, and I have to memorize it because I know that that's what they believe, and I have to write it on the test. But it made it kind of hard to, like, learn. I just, like, blocked out the information.
Yeah. I was just going to ask you about maybe the difference between their reaction in Canada to the reaction here, because I think, especially in, like, the South in America, there's such an acceptance of a rejection of evolution. And so like the majority of people you meet on the street will agree with that sentiment that like evolution isn't true or that it's guided by God or something. So there's like this sense that's the majority of like of a higher power that's in control. And I wonder if that's not really the case in Canada. I've heard that it's a little bit more progressive and also a little bit more secular. And so, yeah, I don't know if that like, so did you feel like your perspective in that was more of a minority?
Yeah, for sure where I was. It depends on where you are in Canada. There's areas that are more rural and conservative, but I was going to the University of Toronto, which is one of Canada's major universities, and it's pretty much secular around there. So especially in the like anthropology department of the university.
Right.
So I think. Oh, go ahead, Mel. You go. I talk a lot. Oh, it's Heather. Okay, Heather.
Yeah. I was gonna say. Yeah, no, I was just gonna say, Rachel. I relate to what you were saying because I did the same thing. I remember being really shocked, also by talk of evolution, and also when you're talking about anthropology. I also took an anthro class, and I remember also being shocked about just the concept that like Homo sapiens were different from like others, like Neanderthals. I remember like learning and like because we didn't learn that at all. I mean, we just obviously like we just learned like at this very linear, like Adam and Eve, concrete Adam and Eve, and then that was it. Like that was the humans. So yeah, so I was like really, but I think this goes to your point, and what Chrissy was saying. Like I think like learning how to be curious and actually being able to appreciate being uncomfortable in the sense of not knowing everything is what I have gotten much better at since I deconverted, and also because my education level has risen. So I think it's like a combination of the two. But yeah, I noticed a huge difference. Whereas before I was like you said, like having this reaction of this thing, I don't agree with this thing, so I just want to shut down. I don't want to engage or learn or talk about it because it makes me uncomfortable because I grew up like just thinking I knew the truth and it was really simple. And now I love I like going to a talk by an expert where I don't know anything and I'm learning and asking questions, like being okay, just like being comfortable with that kind of like lack of certainty. Or even like with evolution, even though I believe in like, obviously there's general consensus amongst scientists that evolution is real, but like the nuances of it, or like climate change, but the nuances of it are really interesting. And obviously I'm not an expert, so I like hearing now, like, and I'm okay with that. So.
Right. And at this point I've found that my brain doesn't like what Heather just said just reminded me, oh, right, we didn't learn about evolution. Like it was really linear. Like she was like teaching me again, like what I was taught. And like, I forgot that we just learned about Adam and Eve and then nothing else. And then like, that's how it started. So it's kind of strange just that like now my brain goes automatically to like, oh yeah, the beginning, the origin of species and like, microevolution and macro, and it's just very interesting. So it's not just evolution, obviously. Like I think reading books also is something that, and we've talked about media, right? But I think the interesting part is like things that captivate me now are quite different than things that used to captivate me. Just the things that turn you on in the intellectual or like mental sense are very different. So Mel, we haven't heard from you. Can you speak to literature? Because I'm like, I want you to get out of your zone, right? Like
that's all right. I'm just sitting back and learning and absorbing. So for me, I was always curious. So that wasn't a particular thing for me, because I was the kid that would be sitting in Sunday school going, okay, I'm like, I have a question. And they're like, oh God, oh God. And so that one lesson I remember, we were talking about how, and I grew up Nazarene. So if you haven't checked that out, go check out that garbage fire. They're like in between Pentecostals and Baptists. So they're heavily fundamentalist. Not quite where they're, we called Baptist bench warmers, and Pentecostals were like running through the aisles with the tambourines, and some of them had snakes, not all of them. Yeah. So we were Nazarene. So it was like, sometimes we sat, you could speak in tongues, but it wasn't required. But you had to pray every night before you went to sleep, because if you died in your sleep, you would go to hell, even if you went to church. You had to confess and ask for forgiveness for sins that you didn't even know you committed. So that was their thing. You could have sinned, not known it, and you're still held accountable for that in the Nazarene faith. That's how I grew up. So they're teaching this story about how guys are supposed to have short hair and women are supposed to have long hair. They're supposed to look like women. Guys are supposed to look like guys. Anything other than that is wrong. And I'm like, well, I have a question. They're like, yeah, okay, what's your question? I'm like, but Samson, though.
Oh.
I actually, I went to Bible quizzing. I went to state 3 years in a row. The only time I didn't go to state was on Genesis. Genesis is a bunch of numbers and families, and it's just, and then this family gave birth to this family, and you're just like, God, who reads this? I was utterly bored with Genesis. And so, I didn't go to state on that. So I knew a lot because I actually read my Bible, and my dad made me read my Bible. And so I'm asking about Samson, but he had long hair. And like, well, that was a blessing from God. And I'm like, but why would God make a blessing a sin?
Asking too many questions, Mel.
So that was me growing up in Sunday school. I was that kid. And then they were talking about, they make Maybelline makes foundation out of aborted fetuses. I'm like, where did you read that? I'm like, it's in the paper. Which one? The what? We'll talk about it. Was always we'll talk about it next week. That was their answer. And we never talked about it. But so I was always asking for sources ever since I was little. But what about this? So I was always asking questions, and it drove people nuts. And so when I got in, and I couldn't ever get straight answers, like when I had sleep paralysis, I didn't know that's what it was. So I was convinced that my house was haunted and my family was cursed because my sister had it. I had it. My mother had it. We're like, we are seeing demons in this house. Somebody help us. So like me and my sister are asking our pastor, like, so this thing is like holding my sister down every night, and it's happening to me too. And they're like, you just need to pray more with the Bible. And then she tried sleeping in my bed because we were so scared. And we're like, oh my God, it's still happening. And so I'm like praying scriptures with my kid's sister every freaking night, trying really hard. But it's like nobody could ever give me a straight answer. I didn't even find out about sleep paralysis till after I left college. And then I told my sister about it. She's like, oh my God, that's what that is. I'm like, yes. And I told my mom, I'm like, we have sleep paralysis. We're not haunted.
Yeah.
Isn't that great? So the problem I had was that I couldn't ever get answers from anybody that was useful in any manner whatsoever. But I still had a very strong faith. So I was constantly conflicted. I've explored all kinds of faiths. I even had a Santeria altar in my house once for a while because I thought, hey, I'm going to give this a go. See what this is like. Had an old church organ. I thought, oh, this is an old church organ. It's going to have extra energy in it. I'm going to put my St. Michael candle here. I'm going to have my other candle here. And then, and if there were people that didn't like me, that freaked them out, and they would never come back to my house again. It actually was quite nice. Oh, I don't like this. Like, oh, there's that. And they're like, oh, that's my voodoo altar. It's okay. It wasn't even Santry. Like, oh my gosh, she does voodoo. And like, they just, and then other people that I wouldn't want in my house wouldn't come over anyway. So it was great. But
yeah. So from what you were saying before, Melba, like, I think I was curious too, but I wasn't, I was curious, like, with biblical like undertone, you know what I mean? So I like thought a lot, but I believed so much that what they were saying was true that I tried to dig like deeper to find like, okay, like that must make sense. What's not going on in my, what am I missing?
Yeah,
it was more like I was just so convinced that I was wrong, that I was not thinking logically.
See, it just kind of made me nuts when I got to college, and then I finally started getting answers that nobody would. And I always had heard evolution is wrong, and the devil, planet of the fossil, all kind of crap. And I'm like, but I kept asking questions, and I would ask questions of my professors. And then I took the class on evolution, ended up working in that professor's lab, volunteering just so I could get involved and learn some of his research. I loved it. And that's when I'm like, my questions are answered. I'm set, so I'm like, I'm okay now. But I think the thing that kind of gave me a filter, the religion filter, was a social thing, a societal thing, because I had it put in my head that gay people were wrong, and that my mother, when she and my dad got divorced, my grandparents were kind of cruel to her. They're like, well, what did you do to make him want to leave you? They said the same thing to me when I got divorced, because I've been married before, and we split up after a couple years. And my grandmother was like, what did you do to make him want to leave you? And I'm like, well, he wouldn't stop fucking women on the internet, Grandma. So I really don't know how to fix that. I'd rather do that instead of fuck me.
So
and
that
I said
was
that really loud.
Huh? So was that like, so for you, was that, when did it happen where you were like, no, this is my life. I can have a divorce. I can get a divorce and it's okay. Or were you already like deconverted at that point?
I think I probably started deconverting really early on, and I just didn't know that's what it was.
Yeah.
Because I kept asking questions. But what I think happened is, once I fully came to the understanding that religion is not my jam,
right,
I was like, you know what? And then I started looking in research on divorced couples, marriage. I started reading more on alternative forms of human sexuality. And I'm like, gay is a thing. Okay. So it's not so bad, And I'm like, okay, so this isn't bad either. So, okay. So once I was able to kind of get past the, the societal, social type of thing. And another thing, I really feel like I felt like I was constantly being held back, and that I couldn't learn, and that I couldn't get things.
That. Yeah.
And so once I figured out, hey, I can do science. Hey, I can read this. Hey, I can actually get evidence and come up with my own stuff. I don't need this. I can do this myself. And so I kind of was able to just go, okay, I don't need that now.
Right.
I don't need that to tell me what's correct.
Yeah.
I can find out for myself. So that was kind of like my filter.
That was good. Yeah, that's like that. I feel like a lot of us, we were all kind of nodding our heads like, yes, there was a moment. There was a moment when we said, yes, we can. Anyway.
Can I?
Add something? Yeah. Go ahead. I have a thought, but yeah, go ahead.
Well, so I was just gonna add, and for me, maybe it's just true for you guys too. Like, those moments come in waves at different times. So like much earlier, I realized that about like my sex, just like sex. Like, I can do this, right? Like, it's okay to have sex, and it doesn't have to be when you're married or even in a monogamous relationship. But recently, what's interesting is I've had that realization again about children. And because like for a long time I always said I was on the fence about wanting to have kids, but like it's really just because I haven't really ever wanted to have kids. And it's really cool, and again, it's like it's a similar feeling of like, it's just really empowering for me to say I don't have to do anything that anybody tells me, just because someone is like that's the thing people do. And there's still a huge stigma around. Not obviously from anyone on here, but I get shit from people, even in like liberal academia, just about like, are you sure? Or like one time I was at a gynecologist, and he was like, oh, are you, getting like a form, I guess I won't go into details about that, but but like I was getting a form of birth control, and he was like, oh, like, are you sure? Like, what if you meet Mr. Right? There's so many assumptions that are super problematic, but like that assumption that like, I don't know, like women, I don't know. Yeah, I know. It was really awful.
Yeah, that's horrible. So I wanted
to have children shouldn't be just your own, like, okay.
Right. Yeah, and like the implication, implying that like I just am wishy-washy. And
yeah, I had an experience like that with the gynecologist too.
Oh
very, very frustrating.
To be fair, for me, like I do feel like I felt differently when I was in a relationship and when I wasn't, of seeing my children and wanting that. I've never said like I'm sure that I don't, but like I'm open to having my mind made up about it one way or the other later in life. But at least so far, I'm like, eh.
Yeah.
And I'm open to it, but I'm just like, there's never been a point where I'm like, I want this, and if I have kids, I want it that way. So, I'm sort of, but I do realize that at least for me, I've experienced that feeling of like being in love with a person and seeing a life with them and wanting to build another life with that person, like that. And so I have felt that way before, but that was an asshole, so didn't work. But it's kind of I think some women change their minds, but I think if you're certain about that, I think it's very insulting for doctors to assume that you're not serious or you're not.
Yeah.
Or that it's not.
Get a new doctor, man. If I had a doctor, and I've gone and changed doctors before, I'm like, yeah, you're trash. And I think I know more than you because you didn't answer any questions that I just read up on this with the latest studies. So,
Right.
Yeah.
If I'm more well read on a particular thing, that's that person's specialty. I'm like, guess who graduated at the bottom of their class? Probably you, Mr. or Mrs. You still like MD. I mean, that was a running joke we had, was like, what do you call a person who graduates at the bottom of their medical school class? Doctor. So, I mean, just because they get that. I mean, but for real, you can have horrible, not good doctors. I mean, they went through the training somehow, and then they still, and it's a lot of work. I have a lot of respect for doctors, but they're still not good doctors.
There are still some, especially the ones. Yeah, especially the ones that aren't aware socially. Like, especially it's like okay, like I think there's this sense of like, and we're getting a little off topic, but do no harm means something. Like do no harm means something mentally and physically. Yeah. And I think that is sometimes missed by a lot of doctors. So.
Yeah.
But I wanted go ahead, Heather.
Okay, sorry, really quick while we're on this rant. Yeah, no, I will say, obviously this is not indicative of all doctors, but I have dated 2 doctors in the past. And they were horrible and absolutely idiots when it came to like what you're talking about, like social, like any kind of like specifically in my case gender. Like they were really smart about like memorizing parts of the body, complete idiots when it came to any kind of like social conversation.
Yeah. They had their nose in a book for a while. I've known people that have gotten their PhD, then are like, okay, I don't want to do academia, then go back and get like, a different degree. And they've only been out of school for like a handful of years, and they are socially stunted. They have no idea how to function at a party, or just because they've never had to do that. Right. So, you just go to academia and you run into these like people that have just always been at university. They have like the social skills of a 14-year-old. Maybe that's just
some of them,
definitely.
Definitely.
Yeah, some of them, not all of them. Yeah. Of course, not all professors. Hashtag not all professors.
Yeah.
But,
I think
hashtag not all doctors.
Important thing, though.
Hashtag not all doctors.
Yeah. Okay, let's go.
Can I bring us? Oh, sorry. Did Courtney want to say something?
Yeah.
Well, Heather was bringing up another thing that was really important of not only socially, but they might just be very illogical and ignorant about other things. And
yes,
I think we pick up on that in the atheist community, where like someone can be very logical about religion and like have come to their conclusions of atheism in a logical way, but it doesn't mean that they're particularly logical other things, like politics or whatever. And so and that can be surprising for people who are just joining the community. Like,
read my Twitter feed on my ass.
Yeah, like this person
like
is an
all
atheist.
the
They're
time.
supposed to be like really, smart about everything else and logical and progressive. And it's like, no, not necessarily. Like they're just that only
Oh,
answers that one
God.
question. I think it's important to remember that.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. Yeah.
Completely
Mhm.
tone deaf sometimes when it comes
Right.
to just
So to get us,
sorry.
sorry.
Sorry. No, I was just saying
I'm
I
just trying to
agree.
get back on track.
Get back
I
on
have something
track.
that's on track.
Okay.
I
Get
do.
back
Wait,
on
I
track.
do too. Wait. Okay.
Oh, okay.
I'll let Rachel go because
You are always letting other people. Why don't you go?
Yeah,
well,
it's your
I'm in
turn.
charge. That's my job. I'm
Oh,
supposed to let
okay.
other people go.
Yeah, you bring us in quickly. Bring us in.
Yeah. All right. So I'll go and then Rachel will hold the floor for you next. So I was just gonna say that aside from all the Dr. Atheist and academia bashing, I wanted to say that well, shit.
That's a
Okay,
good
Rachel.
thing to say.
You go ahead, Rachel.
Okay,
ahead, Rach.
there's two things. I think going off of something that you were saying, Christine, I think that when I was a Christian, I had this set of truth, like this set of beliefs that I took as true, and I kind of just started from there. I think because I was like very well indoctrinated with a specific set of things, they were just like my starting point. So anything that I went off of, or like I've always been a very analytical and logical person, but I never questioned those things because I was taught them from such a young age and taught them like so strongly. And so I wanted to talk about what I thought about like homosexuality and that sort of stuff. I never like when I was a Christian and in university, I started watching a bunch of TV shows after I got my own laptop, and I would watch some TV shows that had some like have you guys seen the show Sense8? Sense8?
Oh yeah, Sensei.
I've
Yeah.
heard of it.
It's the directors or producers or something are transgender, and it has a lot of like sexual content and a lot of like gay LGBTQ sexual content.
Yeah.
And I don't know how this worked in my brain, but anyways, I intellectually thought that homosexuality was wrong, and if you asked me about it, that's what I would have said. But I was kind of fascinated with like this show and with things like that, and it didn't, I don't know, it's just like I thought this was true, but I never thought, I don't know, I didn't have any like hatred. I was just very like, this is true, but I was also kind of curious about it. So I don't know, it was kind of weird. And when I became an atheist, I kind of just had the same view that I had before. I just didn't have to say that it was wrong because God said it was. I don't know. But I remember having a conversation with my sister about this, and she said that if one of her kids was gay, then she would accept them or something. And I said, like, but that's wrong. In the Bible, it says that it's wrong. And it was just very straightforward. So I was wondering what you guys thought about that topic or what I was talking about.
Oh, I think very specifically for me, sexuality was this truth that I always knew but I didn't know, like in my ego versus my superego or whatever. Like I knew that I was, or the id, yeah, probably the id. Anyway, I knew that I was like attracted to women for a really, really long time. I mean, I'm talking like when I spoke against homosexuality, in church or in my neighborhood, like I was like, oh, women are beautiful, like, and I see like, and for me, they're like, I don't see the difference in attraction between males and females. Like I don't comprehend, like I didn't comprehend like attraction because I was supposed to think that men were attractive.
Yeah.
And so there was this like outside sort of piece of me that's like, oh, okay, I just don't get what it means to be attracted to someone because I was literally, attracted to many different types of people. And so I couldn't differentiate. And so I totally get what you're saying, Rachel, because I believed like what I knew is so different from what I know.
Your
I know
experience.
now.
Yeah,
exactly.
that's interesting because I'm bi, I'm pretty sure, and I've always been bi. So I just concluded that people are turned on by things that are sexual, because that's what turned me on, like men or women, I don't know, or both. And I don't know, that's wasn't other people's experience. I mean, isn't everyone's experience, but I didn't know that. So I didn't know that other women weren't like turned on by breasts or whatever.
Right.
I don't know.
We
Yeah,
love
breasts
you,
are great.
Rachel.
Yeah.
What,
We do
Courtney?
love you. Courtney said we love you, Rachel. We do miss you. I'm so glad you're back.
You're
Oh,
amazing.
thanks.
Oh, no.
Our cat was really excited by that.
Yeah. So I wanted to say that, like, I wanted to know if anyone had a similar barrier in terms of their thinking as I did. So when I deconverted, I was scared of the vastness of knowledge. So I was scared of, which I think, we all sort of hit at one point, because I went from like having a very like stable worldview where you're supposed to know everything about the beginning of the world and the end of the world, right? Like everything that is before birth and after death, you're certain of. And then, but then once I got to the point where I had to explore, I was so scared. I was like, so many people think they're right. How can I get through this? How am I going to do this? And so that was really big for me. And I know you just got to do little by little, but like, of course, at the time I was like diagnosed perfectionist. And so it was like,
No, I
yeah.
understand that quite a bit. Because when, I left, I didn't finish my degree. And then I waited for almost 10 years before I went back to school. And the first chemistry class I had to take after that was organic chemistry. And I hadn't had chemistry in almost 10 years. And they're like, you might want to go back and read a little bit. I'm like, no, I got this. It was going back in. And I was still kind of religious prior to going back in. It was around 2009. I went back to finish my degree. My first one. And then I went through and I started to figure out I can do this, but it was kind of scary. It was daunting. I was placed in a position to where I could go back and finish. I'm like, I'm going to finish this because I've got a student loan, no degree, no freaking job, that I can do with this. So I was just like, I'm just going to go back and finish. I'm going to finish this. So it was kind of daunting for me for that. And then, but I think that still is like, I didn't think I could do it. So I still had this mentality a little bit of that framework where I was, well, I'm a girl, science is hard. And I had that kind of programmed. I'm supposed to get married. I'm supposed to have babies. I'm supposed to do this, and I still had that bit of programming that was still sticking around. And so it wasn't until I got my first degree to where I realized, holy freaking moly, I can do this. And then I kind of separated. That was like 2011 to 2012, something like that. I kind of separated from religion at that point. And then that's when I was like, okay, but I was still in the throes of it, finishing my science degree. So trying to cope with, can I do this kind of thing? And then afterwards, I'm like, I have an existential crisis almost every day with the vastness of the universe. And we're so small. And then I'm like, oh my God, what does it all mean?
Right. And it's so much easier, right? It's so much easier with a God.
Yeah. Totally.
And I'm not saying, like, I get that if you are very educated and you know a lot, then it's harder, right? Like, and I'm not, that's not what I meant, right? Like, I'm not saying that people who are educated can't believe in God, but I do think that, like, once you start really getting into science and really understanding it, there is a, like, thin line between being like, there's no way, there's got to be a God, and like, no, there's no way, there can't be a God. Like, there is a very thin line, and it's like so real to me now, like when you look at the DNA and how like advanced it is, I just think you can either think like, wow, that is so well done. Or you could think, wow, that is so randomly done. And they're so close, they're so close.
Yeah.
And so I want to know, Courtney, was there anything like this for you? I haven't heard from you.
Yeah, I mean, I remember being in grade school and having a really big interest in science and being really intimidated by science. And that was just my own insecurities of my ability to like be a smart person. But I do remember confiding in one of my parents' friends that I was interested in science because she was like, "Oh, what do you want to do when you get, older?" And she warned me about science, that she's like, "Well, if you get too far into science, you've got to be careful because you might lose your faith."
Wow.
I have friends that are PhDs working at NIH in cancer research who are Christians, heavy
Right.
Christians.
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
So,
it's not impractical
But
that
I
can
mean,
happen.
she was right.
Exactly.
I mean,
She was right.
but I don't
What
know.
about you?
But I do remember, like, instead of me saying, "Oh, well, maybe it's not true then if it doesn't hold up to science," I didn't think that far ahead yet. All I was thinking was, "Oh no, I better be careful." And so I did. I don't remember learning about evolution at all. And I probably was in my biology class. I really don't know. But what I do remember is after getting back from India, taking geology and then learning about evolution once my worldview wasn't as solid. And that's when I started to take it all in and actually benefit from the love for critical thinking and asking questions and all these things. And so maybe I remember it now because I was willing to receive it then.
Mm-hmm.
But I honestly don't remember if it's just that I was in Texas and they didn't go over evolution in public school, or if I learned it, for like a day because the teacher didn't want a bunch of angry parents knocking her door down, or if I wasn't able to receive it. I don't know, but I really don't remember it at all.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, interesting.
That's very interesting. Heather, what about you? Did you, and then maybe outside of science, maybe outside of homosexuality and science, right? Because that's where we sort of hung our thinking hats.
Yeah, no, I was going to say, so I'm, I think most of for our listeners, I'm a literature professor. And so, yeah, I can talk about this from that angle, but it's similar in that I was really overwhelmed when I started deconverting. One of the things I was really sort of like in awe of and overwhelmed by, but not in a bad way. It was good. Was just, well, a couple of things. First of all, how horribly we learn history.
Oh yeah,
in our country.
That's true.
So that's a big thing for me. And those are inextricably connected to history is intertwined with literature. So what I end up doing a lot of in my lit classes in college, I teach at a university. I'm going to be starting a new job at a new university soon. Is doing a lot of history lessons, and especially about things that get brushed aside in our main curriculum. So that, and also just how vast and varied the human experience is, which is also what is so great about literature. It's why I love what I do, because really, like, teaching literature is really teaching empathy to people. If you're reading about other, and that's something that I felt really empowered to do after deconversion. When I was a Christian, I talked about this on my podcast, but not on Christina's podcast, but not on here. But maybe I have, but I can't remember. But as a Christian, I read all the time. When I was a Christian, I loved reading, but it was very limited in what I was reading. It was mostly like Christian romance novels, and like Tolkien was okay, and C.S. Lewis was okay because they were Christian. But other fantasy was a no-no because it was satanic. Like I wasn't allowed.
Same in my house.
Yeah,
we have lots of Christian fiction.
Yeah. So so it was very limited. So I felt really excited I wanted to read everything by people that were different than me, and and obviously like literature that was not imposing like a Christian ideology. And so I kind of had the awe moment, but for me, it was a positive, generally a positive thing. I guess I didn't have as much of the anxiety that you were.
Yeah, speaking of like, let's see, fantasy and like horror and things like that, I think that also was something that changed in my neural pathways, like in terms of demonic influence, like negative feelings, evil awareness. Those sort of things were like innate to how I treated the world. I mean, like it's the same sort of feeling if you've never been a Christian and you're trying to relate to what we're talking about. It's the same sort of feeling as like going down into the basement, like it's that, except you could feel that presence in bad music around like negative people or people who weren't, believers. And that really changed for me in a big way. And
that's really interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
To totally relate to that.
Like fear. Yeah, it's like this, like, but it's definitely like a fight or flight reaction. It's totally like, no, you need to go because this isn't godly, this isn't holy, And I like the same thing, like Mel, when you were talking about your night terrors, I was like thinking of that, like how if I had night terrors, like I would be sure that it was demonic.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be like questioning like, oh my goodness, am I being attacked? I would be like, oh my God, like I am being attacked by Satan,
Yeah.
And now it's not even in my pathways. I don't get scared the same way. It's a different kind of fear now.
Yeah, that's a good point, Chrissy. Yeah.
Yeah, I think for me, there's for sure a difference when relating to other people. I remember right after I deconverted, I had this like 2-hour-long conversation with this woman that I met at the pool that I went swimming to or whatever about something random. And I just remember thinking, hey, I haven't wondered what she believes or if she's a Christian or like whatever at all. It was just like, I can be open and accept this human that's in front of me and talk about whatever. And I didn't think she was a Christian, but it didn't matter. And I thought that was really cool to notice that. And there was one thing I wanted to say about what you guys were saying before. I think so. It's like a month, over 2 years now since I realized that I didn't believe and that I am an atheist. And I remember I went through this weird stage, like the first year that I was an atheist, where I lost confidence in what I knew. Like it was weird. I don't know if it was specifically related to that or if it was my mental health state at that time, but it was like, did I leave my keys or do I have my keys in my pocket? I remember putting them in my bag. Am I sure that they're there? And I'd check like 3-4 times. Or like I'd be writing a message to people on Facebook or whatever, and I'd look up words because I wasn't sure that I had the definition right. I like lost so much confidence in my mental abilities. It was really weird, but it was like a really strong experience. And I feel like it, I don't know for sure, but I was very confident that I knew the truth and that I was correct before. And then that was so like soundly shattered when I realized like, oh, I don't think so much of what was the foundation of what I believed before was true, that it had a really strong effect on me.
That's brilliant. I love that you brought, like, I feel like that happens to so many people. Like I'm thinking back now and I'm like, wow, yeah. And that's like, I never really even thought about that it just sort of destroys not just the foundation of who you are, but like like how you take a step is like, just like, oh, wait a minute. Like, am I supposed to go this way? Or
there's something pretty interesting. I actually, on my audio podcast, I used to have a separate one where I'd have guests on. Now I just take like the audio from some of my shows and put that on as my podcast. I had Amanda Glaze on. She's Evo PhD. She works in evolutionary education. That's her research. And so she tries to go through, in particularly science resistant areas to try to help people understand evolution a bit better. And one of the things that's completely lacking in education, and particularly when you're trying to educate people who are resistant to it based on religious means, is aftercare. There's no aftercare. If you're coming to them and you're trying to educate them on something and you kind of know that they're already pushing back, but what I would have to do is remove religion completely from the talk. So you can have that. I just want to make certain you understand what these terms are, what these particular words mean. And so, but when they start to comprehend it and understand how much it makes sense and how simple and simplistic it is, they start to think, I've been lied to. Either this person's lying to me or I've been lied to by other people. And that lying may not have been intentional because these people have truly believed this all the way down. They're just resistant to accepting evidence. But there's no aftercare for that internal trauma that a person goes through trying to cope with that. So I can completely understand if you get to a point to where you're like, okay, I'm accepting this. That kind of breaks down kind of the scaffolding of your own mind to where you're like, okay, what else did I get wrong? What else have I been doing wrong? And that sort of thing. There's no care for that at all within the education system, whether it's kids, college, adults. There's nothing there to kind of cope with that or to be there for people who are having that type of struggle, because it's painful and it's very real. I've seen it firsthand when I'm teaching very, very smart kids who are straight A students, going to graduate at the top of their class, extremely heavy fundamentalists, will not accept evolution. I'm like, it's okay. You don't have to. What? I just want to make certain you understand what the terms are. Remove that altogether. It's not a fight. Then they go there and they learn about the terms and they see the evidence. Then you can see that struggle and it's heartbreaking. I'm like, you're just right there. And I know that this is breaking your heart with me telling you that. So it's kind of, as an educator, it's hard to watch. And so it's important to just go, hey, it's all right. You don't have to think about all this now. Just understand it and then process on your own terms. So it's just, there's nothing there.
Wonderful. That's really wonderful. I think it's comes down to the same thing that Heather was talking about in terms of empathy. I think that, and I was thinking just sort of as like a last, like general topic, I was thinking about how we do, the further away from that position of like, of vulnerability, of like belief, of like naivety in terms of being a Christian, or in terms of like having a, flat earth like education, or I'm not saying like even that extreme, I'm just saying like to a certain level, we do forget what it means to know something, and I think that lack of empathy brings so much dissension between Christians and atheists, and being able to bridge that and have aftercare, like you were saying, Mel, and to be able to just let people fall apart, like Rachel was saying she did, is so important. No, just fall apart, or you know what? Don't believe me. It's okay, but let's try to understand each other. Like, I'm not trying to convince you of anything, but let's like really listen. Is like and I think that would like heal so many wounds in the United States today if we just, if we just said, look, we know you know the truth because we've been there. We knew the truth. I get it, but like just know that I've been there, and now try to like get where I am. You don't have to be here. You don't have to like hang with me, but just listen to how I got here. And I think that's so important to sort of not, because we can only change our own thinking. We can't change someone else's thinking.
But I will say it's very valuable, and this is something that you kind of learn as an educator, and it's really important to kind of model how the thinking goes. And so if you have it's like when you're trying to solve a problem, it's really important to go through and say, okay, this is how the steps that we go through for this particular thing. This is where you're going to get hung up. And so if you've already been through this process and you're able to go through and share, these are the different steps that you go through when you're coping with this or dealing with this. This is where you might get hung up. Does this happen to me? This is kind of common. And you can kind of make it a bit more real, but it's important to kind of model and build on your own process of thought. So when I'm like teaching how to do a math thing in chemistry or whatever I've done that, I'll sit there and go, okay, this is going to look scary because it's got letters in it. And then, so let's just go ahead, and it freaked me out. And this is why it freaked me out when I first learned how to do this. This is why it's going to freak you out. But we're going to go through this together, and we're going to go through the steps. Now, at this point, I sometimes do this because my brain wants to flip it the other way. That's not good. So go back and check at this point. So even when you're talking to people about evolution and trying to get them, it's important to also kind of pattern. Well, I went through the same thing too, like you were saying, and this is kind of what I did. Now, I don't know if that'll help or not, but this, kind of model the type of thinking is really important too.
Yeah. So Courtney, as like a psychologist, how, like, do you see yourself relating to maybe Christians or like believers or maybe even non-believers because of your background and trying to like change your thinking to like help develop their own?
Yeah, I mean, I think there was a point when I first deconverted where I could put that Christian cap back on and sort of understand their perspective. And I think the longer I've spent outside of the Christian perspective, it's harder and harder to put myself in that mindset because it's really far away from me now. But I do think that I did a couple of Ask an Atheist events at churches. And one of the ones I did, it was two like middle-aged men and me on a panel in front of a congregation of a bunch of mostly like retired people. And they were just asking questions of all of us, but they ended up asking me a whole bunch of questions because I wasn't the typical like atheist that they thought would be in front of them. And I also was the only former Christian group. And I mentioned that like I didn't feel harmed by religion, and so like Mel was saying, I walked them through my deconversion in like a really abridged way, but just like starting with a point where like I wasn't angry at God, I didn't feel wronged by religion, I wasn't abused by anybody. Like this was simply me not being able to hold on to my faith based on what I learned in my classes and just the logic that had hit me in India. And they really clung to me because they had a lot of questions because they were like, oh, well, we identify with her. So I found that when identifying with Christians, if I'm just kind of myself, because I really have to lean on the fact that I have been where they are and they will identify with the way that I used to think. I just have to try and be as honest as I can and think back to their perspective because it can be hard. Like if they just bring up like the mark of the beast, then I'm going to start taking a step back. I don't know what to do with it because I didn't believe that. And that's a little bit too far out for me to be able to like rein in. Like, I don't even understand what you're talking about. So it's like, I don't know. So I can't deal with that one. So,
Yeah, I really relate to that, Courtney, in a specific way. I've had to learn to do this with when it comes to hell, with my family, like my parents, because I just have had to work on like having empathy for where they are, and recognizing like from their perspective, hell is real, literal, and terrifying, and that has really helped me approach my interactions with my parents with more empathy. Because for a while it does seem like a mark of the beast thing to me, like biological perspective, but then I have to remind myself, like, it's really terrifying for them. And a lot of their comments about me, no longer, or they like sense that I'm no longer a Christian, are really motivated by fear
Right.
for me. And that has helped. Yeah.
Yeah, and it is sad to know that like when they try to rein you back into believing, it is out of love and genuine, like they really do believe this and they want to care for you in this way, and that can be really sad. But what's interesting is to let them know that you're doing the exact same thing. Like, you feel liberated by this deconversion, and you feel that the world is so much more vast and beautiful and amazing because we know about the world, and a religious perspective makes the world so much smaller and scarier and divisive. um, and so it's, I think it's true that we really are there doing the exact same thing. Of out of love, we are trying to liberate them away from ignorance. So yeah, it's the same motivation, like,
Yeah.
Right. And go ahead.
I'm sorry.
Oh, no, Mel, you go, and then I'll go.
Okay. So it's pretty interesting, especially when I was teaching in the public school system. The thing that I would have to do is completely remove religion out of the equation. Because one of the two things that happened, if I told them that I wasn't religious, they would either shut down completely and not listen to me, or they would be so upset for me that they'd be praying for me every day. And in either way, I've already lost because they're not going to be focused on the content and the message of what it is I'm trying to say. This is kind of why I don't really talk about religion like on my science channel, because it's not something that's particularly, it doesn't have anything to do with science. But at the same time, if I start talking a lot about religion, now other people might pop on my channel and say things, but I'm usually stay pretty quiet about it because I feel like I have to be an accessible person that is non-threatening. And I can just say, hey, it's completely fine if you have these beliefs. It doesn't hurt me. It doesn't bother me. And I do say I'm not particularly religious, but I still make myself accessible to where they don't have to sit there and either shut down and not listen to me or worry about my soul, because either way, it's my whole goal is completely shattered at that point. So I kind of get that, and they do get worried about you. Like, I like her and I want to listen to her, but I'm really afraid she's going to die and go to hell. And that,
right, yeah,
and it's a problem. So,
it is
It's hard to
definitely.
remember that that's not condescending.
Right.
Yeah.
Well,
They don't mean it that way.
and it's the same thing for us too.
Yes.
It is hard. It is hard for them to be like, they say like educated people or atheists. Like, we say that all the time. When you become more educated, and that's not. I know so many wonderfully educated people who are believers, who are Christians, or at least like believe in God, and like our language, changes when you say that you know something, when you say that you understand something that someone doesn't. Your language becomes more arrogant and more condescending, and it's hard to prevent that. It's hard for them to prevent that, because they're just like, no, you please hear me, is all they're saying. We don't want you to go to hell. I mean, there are some out there, and I think, who don't necessarily share that message of love and need to like to bring people that understanding, but that's what we're trying to do. And I feel like the more we bring debates to the table where it's like, hey, like, you're wrong because, or like, no, you're thinking incorrectly, we have to take that language out and become more empathetic in our words, in our language, and that's where you make the switch from like atheists, what is it, like epistemologists, to like atheist empathetic. You know what I mean? Like there's
I don't
Yeah, go
I
ahead.
don't understand why it would seem condescending. I think just because the people in my life that would say that sort of thing, like say that they're worried that I'm going to hell, they would say it from a place of genuine concern because they believe that, not because they're like, well, I'm right and you're whatever. I don't know. It's from a different place. So I guess just because I haven't really heard that, then that comment doesn't seem condescending to me.
Yeah.
I
Oh,
think
I've had it
people
said
here-
to me in condescending ways. They meant to be
Yeah.
harmful and hurtful. And
Okay.
so, but at the same time,
But we won't talk about SJ right now. Anyway, go ahead. Sorry, Mel. Sorry.
Forget
like,
her, man.
Like the spectators of the 4th of July parade here in Texas, we have our atheist float on the 4th. And last year we had a lady like, you think it's hot now? And it's like, yeah, like there are contexts where it is condescending. But I do agree with you, Christine, like that, like we do need to be careful about the language that we use, that we don't want to alienate people and make them feel stupid or feel like we think that about them. But I do think that in certain contexts, there is a place for calling ignorance and calling something wrong. And we find that in the unapologetic rhetoric of like Richard Dawkins and Christopher Hitchens, and I think there is definitely a place for that. Matt Dillahunty too, where it's a very effective tactic for some people, and then for other people, this other more soft tactic works for them instead. And so I think all methods together can affect more people.
Yeah,
That's true.
I was going to add too, and actually, Courtney, I'm glad you said that because I was going to say something similar, just in that it's such a hard balance because I totally hear you, Chrissy. I mean, and we've talked about this, the two of us, like, but it's hard as an educator because there are moments where I feel like I do have to make a very clear statement, and especially in terms of facts, because especially right now, like that's been obviously like such an important part of this cultural moment, and politically, Donald Trump and other politicians using this language of we can just invent facts, and that's also really dangerous. So I think there's a fine line between I agree, you want to be empathetic when talking to, and it's not just Christians. I'm also speaking broadly. It's partly that, and also just other kinds of, like alternative facts, if someone is using that phrasing. But it's hard because I think there are moments where you need to take a stand and say, climate change is real. Like, sure, there's definitely nuance. You can absolutely get into debates about all of the ins, but like to entertain someone, and again, you can do it in kindness, but you can still be kind about it. But I guess but you have to be firm, so maybe not kind. Do you know what I mean? Like it's complicated, and I have this issue in the classroom, because I try so hard, and like I want my conservative Christian students to feel like I see them as a human and that there's a space for them. I really think that's important. However, if a student says something that's factually incorrect about, for example, like race in this country, I'm going to say that's factually incorrect.
What do they say on the atheist experience? They have a saying, don't they say like, we don't hate you, we just think you're wrong, or something like that. Does anyone remember?
Oh, goodness.
I would like binge the atheist experience when I first deconverted, and they always said that. We don't hate you, we just think you're wrong.
Oh, goodness.
And it's, yeah, like I think the atheist community is very good at consciously separating people from ideas. And I do think you get better at doing that when you deconvert, mostly because of the community that we become a part of. But not every atheist does that. Not every atheist becomes part of that community and learns those tactics. And it's important to engaging with Christians how little of this conversation they have had, or how few of these arguments are, and to be very patient with them, because you're dealing with things like Mel was saying. Some of the things that we've learned can be so shocking to religious people, and we have to to that and remember the perspective that we used to have and how devastating that can be.
Yeah.
Well, we're coming up on a little over an hour now. This has been an amazing chat. Any last thoughts or anything going on with your individual work channels, anything like that? We can go down the line. Rachel, what about you? Any last thoughts, or you want to?
I think this was a really good thing to talk about because I for sure noticed a shift between my perspective when I was a Christian and now that I don't believe anymore. So I think it was really important to talk about this because I'm sure a lot of people can relate to that experience.
Awesome. What about you, Heather? Any last thoughts or talking about upcoming projects that you're doing?
Yeah, well, Christina and I are officially almost releasing our podcast. It is definitely going to happen this month. We're almost there.
Sounds like you're getting married or
Yay.
something. Christina and I are getting married.
Yeah, I've got the ring. It's just on the wrong hand. It's on
You're getting podcast married. We should have a party or something.
yeah, it's a funny story. This is my purity ring, so I still wear it even though I'm not pure.
Wait, let me.
But I still like it because it's something my dad gave me. Anyway, yeah, Forsaking Faith, the podcast. You can check us out on our Facebook page, Forsaking Faith, on Twitter at Forsaking Faith, email.
This is my purity ring.
I love it. Oh my God, purity ring.
I never wear it. It's too sparkly and I'm not a jewelry person, but yeah, it's very pretty.
Okay.
Is it your birthstone?
Sorry.
Okay. Yeah.
What? Totally random.
Yeah. Okay. Anyway, yeah, podcast. Okay, cool. I'm done.
Yay. Courtney, what about you?
I never had a purity ring.
That's good.
Project. Doing last
definitely
thought.
asking that. So a little tidbit about this weekend. This weekend was really full. We did a whole day of recording for the YouTube channel for Atheist Edge. We had R and Raw in studio all day, which was great. And then the next morning, I joined R and Raw and a bunch of other people at a protest of Steadfast Baptist Church, who is a local small town church of very bigoted people who, think that women who get divorced or have sex outside of their marriage should burn in hell.
Wow.
And so their latest rhetoric was calling for the literal deaths of gay people. So we went and did a protest with a bunch of rainbow flags and disco music, and it was glorious.
I'm so happy about that. Obviously not about the
What?
Oh, I said I'm so happy to hear, and then I wanted to clarify that I meant about the protest. And
Yeah. So, and I do, I feel like it's kind of sad when I hear people who are outside of this community hear that and they're like, well, what's the point? Why are you going and, why are you going there? And it's like, if nothing else happens, we're showing the people driving by what is being said. And we're all standing up and saying, hey, it's not okay to say this. You have the right to, but what you're saying is still not okay. And just standing up and being in opposition to that instead of them just going about their business thinking everybody's fine with it. I think it's important. So that in and of itself, I think, was worth being out there in the sun, and it was hot. And
we are proud of you, Courtney. Thank you for doing that.
Thank you. Yeah, it was all the way in Fort Worth, and I'm in Dallas now, so it was just like it was a long way. And I like halfway through my 40-minute drive, I was like, should I be doing this right now? But yeah, I should.
Christy, what about you? You last things.
Yeah, I wanted to say yes. I hear everybody on the yes. There's certainly a place for all of the rhetorics of of defending what you believe, but to stand behind like what Women of Deconversion sort of is and like what Forsaking Faith is. I think that the voice of empathy needs to be louder.
Yeah.
And that's all. Like, I guess there is a place for that, and I think I went too far in one direction when I said that. So I'm gonna apologize and correct myself. The role model for those of you Just, no, but anyway, yeah, so I just want to say thank you for checking me on that one. I think that's really important. So I'm going to shut up because my kids.
But that's a good note to end it on. Empathy is important.
Empathy is important. And so I'm gonna end for Christy. She's having some difficulties on her end. So I'm gonna end for her. So be like, I've got a project now on Sundays at 3 p.m. called Oral Dacity, where I have Doc Savage on, and we take this past Sunday, we completely ripped apart Deepak Chopra. It was absolutely hilarious. But it's a comedy show. So he swears a lot, and he's Scottish. So it's like better than Deadpool.
That sounds great.
So go check it out, Oral Dacity. Next Sunday, we're going to do that to David Avocado Wolf. So if you want some lighthearted, funny, we go through like actual science papers and talk about, well, we use that term loosely. They get published, but they're bad science. And so we just go through I think I cried laughing a lot yesterday. I had to take a moment. I'm like, oh, actual tears. Because it was hilarious. So if you need something lighthearted, go check that out. youtube.com/scientistmel. So for all of the amazing women of Deconversion, thank you guys in the chat for watching. And if you have any questions or comments, just drop them in the comment section. Check out all of these ladies' work. They're amazing as well. And you guys have a wonderful night. And thank you for being here.
Thank you.